Hello, everybody. Welcome to a meeting of the Portland Board of Education Finance, Operations, and Personnel Committee. I'm the chair. I'm Sarah Bryden. It is 4:32 p.m. on April 3rd, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to sort of set some of the context here. This is a meeting that was not originally part of the budget process, but what has happened is we've gotten some updated information from the state of Maine in terms of the amount of funding that we will be getting for fiscal year 2024. So this meeting is intended for us to discuss and review the revised budget that the co-interim superintendents have recommended based on those new numbers from the state. So with us today, we have myself. We also have committee members Opperman, Figdor, and Youssef. Thank you so much. And then we also have board chair Lentz with us as well. And then in terms of staff, we have co-interim superintendents Townsend, Nally, and also budget director Miranda Fasulo. Now that we have kicked off our meeting and sort of explained some of the context, I'm also going to give a quick note about the agenda. So what we're going to do is in a moment, I'm going to turn this over to the co-interim superintendents to walk us through this new revised budget. We're going to have an opportunity for public comment. Ordinarily, we would not have an opportunity for public comment, both because this is a committee meeting and also because we're going to be voting, but because of the nature of the late-breaking information from the state, this is a little bit of a special circumstance, so we're going to do public comment. We are then I'm going to be looking for a motion from a committee member to amend the budget as it had been recommended to us before, in line with this current set of revisions. We're going to go through the Roberts rules for that, and then then that will allow us to formally discuss the budget as it currently stands, as recommended by the co-interim superintendents. If after that there are additional motions for amendments, then we can go through that, and we will end with hopefully a motion for consideration and action to move the budget as of that point in our conversation to the full board. So that is sort of an overview of what we're going to do. And now I will turn this meeting over to Erin and Malia. Go ahead.
Thank you, Member Bryden, and good afternoon, everyone. So we are, while unexpected late-breaking work, very pleased with this particular version of additional work that we had to do. A very welcome last-minute update in terms of some more resources to support the work of our schools. So if you want to move it forward, Erin. As far as stepping you through, so this is sort of the agenda pre what Chair Bryden just described. We're going to just step you through a regrounding in our priorities and our strategy very briefly. Then we're going to describe the adjustments to the budget on the revenue and expenditure side. And then we'll close out with explaining how we're using some freed up money in ESSERF to advance some additional investment priorities that we were not able to do previously before we got this news. And we'll take questions. So this is just a reminder, as far as our FY24 budget priorities this year, our big goals were to create a budget that helped to maintain our commitment to the Portland Promise goals in terms of achievement, whole student, people, and equity. We were striving to be responsive to the evolving context, and specifically the fact that we're welcoming so many new students, most of whom are multilingual learners with intensive language needs. And then finally, we were aiming to strengthen and improve our operational effectiveness, in part in response to some of the operational challenges we've had, but then also using this as an opportunity to really look critically at our investments in our core operations. As far as our strategy, so prior to this evening, before we had these additional funds, what we've been working to do is to first preserve core programming. So really looking at how to preserve the work, but acknowledging that we could make only minimal new investments, and those that we were making were aligned to those priorities. Part of our strategy this year was to leverage reserves and to think about this in terms of a multi-year strategy. So not doing all of that this year, but looking out multiple years in advance. In addition, part of the big strategy is to leverage the ESSER funds for the one additional year that we have, acknowledging that it goes away in 1 year, but also wanting to take advantage of the money while we do have it. We did make some reductions, both from local and from what had been in ESSER. And in doing that, we were trying to spread out the reductions as much as possible, trying hard not to completely cut out particular services or programs, which we were mostly able to do, though not entirely. And then finally, throughout this process, we've been wanting to highlight the need for bigger structural shifts in terms of how we think about organizing schools in Portland, in anticipation of both the ESSER funding cliff as well as other kind of dynamics at play that are going to impact our budget in a pretty significant way next year. And then after getting the news that we had the additional resources via the state, we kind of took a step back and came up with this as our strategy for how we are approaching using those resources to put forth to you all an amended or a proposed amended budget this evening. So first, as you'll see in a moment, we are recommending that we do reduce the tax rate increase from what we had originally proposed in the superintendent's recommended budget. Second, we're working to restore core services that we had to cut out of local. So we'll step you through which of those we put back in. Third, in a similar vein, we're returning some core services to local that we had cut and put onto ESSER. And then finally, this leaves up some space in ESSER. So we are proposing we make some strategic investments aligned to our priorities, using the remaining ESSER funding and continuing to acknowledge the fact that that is only 1 year funding, that much of what we're trying to advance are things we can potentially not carry forward in the long term, but some of it probably we would want to. So again, using this year when we have the money to start doing that longer term planning in order to hopefully be in a position to not have to significantly cut programs and services from our students next year. So Erin's going to step through some of the adjustments in terms of revenue and expenditures.
Great. Thank you, Malia, and good evening, everybody. So this slide speaks to a little bit of adjustments on the revenue side in terms of our local budget. So you can see our original proposed budget had a revenue target of $141 million, just above that. The increase in the state subsidy that we learned about last week is just a hair over $3.6 million. So we're proposing to use just over $1 million of that dollars to reduce the tax levy, reduce the tax rate increase from our original proposed budget of an increase of 7% to reducing that to 6%. And then that leaves us with current local revised revenue budget of $143.8 million. In terms of the tax impact, you can see here that it reduces by about $20 a year for property owners with a median assessed value home. And we believe, that this reduction, is strategic at a few levels. One, given the significant additional revenue we have, felt it was appropriate in honoring of our local taxpayers to pass along some of that to them. It also allowed us, as we'll speak about here on the expenditure side, to address some of the concerns around both, less so the reductions, but a few of the specific reductions, but also some of the programming that we had to move out of our local budget into ESSER. And so we feel like this is a strategy that allows us to kind of maintain a significant level of programming, recognizing it's still a significant ask in terms of a 6% increase, but allows us to have flexibility as we move forward in terms of maintaining our programming, with the uncertain fiscal future in the coming years. So in terms of expenditure adjustments, as Malia said, we're restoring many of the positions that had been shifted to, or all of the positions that had been shifted to ESSERF in our original budget. So bringing them back onto the local budget on the expenditure side. So that includes the math coaches that serve at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Our classroom teachers, which, if you'll remember, included a handful of elementary positions, as well as the 9.5 FTE that represents our high school equity enhancement, and then the 5.0 of high school youth development positions. So that's 3 Make It Happen positions and the 2 extended learning coordinator positions that we had proposed to move to ESSERF. We'll move back to the local budget where they've been for some time. And then just in terms of other adjustments on the expenditure side, so we're proposing to restore the community coordinator positions to be able to continue and facilitate much of the volunteer work, community engagement, service provision to students and families that they accomplish for our schools. One additional kind of reduction is fully accounting for the reduction of the cell phones so that, our proposed expenditures are in line with our contractual obligations around providing cell phones to certain staff. And then we reduced a little bit, given this new expenditure, some of the proposed reductions that we had. So we're moving that from 5% to 4%, excuse me. So that gets us to an equal kind of revised expenditure budget of that $143.8 million to match our revenue budget. So in terms of just pulling back, what that means in terms of overall where we stand. So our revised budget reflects a sum of $143.8 million, which is over 10, almost $11 million increase over FY23, so an 8% increase. But given the additional state subsidy, it actually reduces our school tax rate. So we're seeing our expenditures go up, but our school tax rate, increase reduced in terms of the overall proposed budget as it stands. A little more detail on that, and Miranda, chime in if I misstate anything here, but you'll see changes a little bit at the salary and benefit level, because of restoring many of these positions, that either we had reduced the community coordinators or we had moved on to the ESSERF positions. So you'll see that figure is up slightly. And then obviously a significant change in the non-tax revenue, because of the state subsidy coming in where that number was significantly less, and then a reduction on our property tax levy. So again, this, kind of matches out in terms of the $143.8 million on both our expenditure and revenues. Shifting gears here a little bit before we get into the proposed. So those are the, kind of the summary of the proposed changes on our local budgets, as we talked about, which is kind of the matter at hand tonight. But we also want to continue to provide visibility into our proposals around the ESSERF dollars. So here, just briefly, no changes here on this slide, anticipating approximately 7.8 million at the end of this fiscal year, 2023. We've received almost 42 million all told, used, somewhat equally about in half in terms of immediate response to the pandemic and the ongoing recovery needs that we see both in our current year and as we project into future years. And so thus, bringing up the questions that Malia raised about FY25 and beyond. So lastly, and we'll step through this in just a minute with some detail, based on freeing up, moving those positions, the math coaches, the classroom teaching positions, and the Make It Happen positions back to the local budget, that freed up, approximately $2.5 million on ESSERF for additional investments. So you can see here, broadly speaking, kind of how those are allocated. So we'll step through now, kind of by priority area, what those additional investments are, and then we'll conclude with kind of a summary and next steps. So Malia.
Thanks, Aaron. So in terms of investments that we're going to advance on ESSERF, now that we have a little bit of space there, the first is to just increase summer programming by 100,000, bringing it to $1 million, thus potentially creating some space for some secondary level community partner programs. The second is some additional curriculum investment. We really like this particular investment in ESSER because while we have ongoing curriculum costs, there's a significant upfront cost to some of our curriculum. So this isn't necessarily going to be something that has to carry forward. So specifically in here, there's more ELA resource allocated because after working with schools, they came back wanting to implement more than our initial plan. So this enables that, as well as putting back in a little bit of resource for experiential learning and health that was cut when we were having to reduce that line. We're proposing we bring back or just not cut the full living schoolyard teachers. We are reducing it by 1, so it'd be 4.0. And we're in the midst of reimagining how we might envision this program this coming year with an eye toward if it couldn't be something that lives on long term, how do we work this year to really embed a lot of that work? And secondly, take advantage of having these teachers maybe potentially go around to schools like the mobile makerspace teacher, thus freeing up grade level teams in the elementary buildings to do collaborative planning around the new ELA curriculum. So there's a whole kind of vision and strategy proposed that the elementary leaders were excited about that we want to really start to flesh out, assuming we have this resource. So that's still a work in progress, but directionally how we're thinking about accomplishing multiple goals with that. Next, just putting a little bit more in for the mobile makerspace teacher. We had 0.3 originally, we are bringing it up to 0.5. The rest of that is still not yet funded. And so we're still going to have to go out looking for other grants, but just trying to get a little bit more here. We also are putting in a placeholder for 3.0 FTE ed techs for high schools. Our alternatives to suspension work group is meeting through the end of the year and then has a 2-day retreat in June. And our intention was to have them have a pool of resources to use to advance to enact their recommendations. So all that had been cut. So this group was going to end and then we weren't going to have any resources per se to allocate toward whatever ideas they came up with. So we're using the 3.0 FTE ed tech as a placeholder, but we know that work is still underway with that team. We're bringing back one of the BCBAs that we had cut 2, if you remember, from ESSER. So wanting to have one person who will be able to work outside of special education and consult across schools with the small percent of students that has significant behavioral needs that our schools need more support and expertise around. And then finally bringing back in some of the SEL consulting dollars so that some of the work we've done with Jose from Great Schools Partnership or with Tommy from Attune can carry forward because it was intended to go for 2 years. So we can really see that work through. So what we did then, you'll remember these slides from our original presentation. We just wanted to visually reflect kind of, okay, where are we landing from what we originally had shared with you. So this, in terms of our Portland Promise investment summary, is the stuff that we're investing. So you can see everything I just named reflected here. If it's red, it either has been added or it's been increased. Like the mobile makerspace teacher has been an increase. The summer was there, but an increase. ELA curriculum was there, but an increase, so on and so forth. So you can see that all reflected in our original summary. And then on the next slide, just this is for the Portland Promise investments, what had been requested but was not funded in our original proposed budget, as well as what had been in ESSER but was pulled out of ESSER to make space for all those local investments. And so these are the things of that list. So, I mean, what you see here is that certainly we didn't come close to being able to accomplish everything that the team believes we need, but we feel like these are the most strategic choices in terms of this list of investments to continue to advance our Portland Promise goals and priorities. And then on the next slide, the big priority we've had throughout our budget is responding to the needs of our multilingual learners. When we met with you all as a committee last, we asked you for your feedback around, where did you want to make sure we were investing with the additional resources? And pretty universally, we heard from you all proposals that were broadly in the realm of supporting our multilingual learners. So what we did is we pulled together our teams from family community specialists, our language development team. So we had Maureen Clancy and Grace and Carlos and Jane and the whole group to say, okay, let's look holistically, because people had singular things you'd heard about there. How about the pre-K DLL? How about the family community specialist? So we really wanted to go back to the team, sit around a table together and say, when we look at this list of proposed investments that we had not been able to advance, what would we prioritize among them? And this is what that group together recommends. And so the first are 5.0 FTE for school-based language access. So this showed up before as 5.0 language acquisition edtechs in what we proposed and didn't get to advance. They've done some additional thinking about what's needed at the school site, which are people that can do both the student and family facing work, which right now our language ed techs are student facing only, our family engagement specialists are family facing primarily. So this is kind of a new position that's within that context that is really putting the language supports at the school level and that can work with our families and with our students. So essentially, that's the 5.0 ed tech line you saw before, but that's how we're framing it. We're proposing adding back one FTE for an ESOL teacher to be placed based on kind of where some of the numbers are landing. So rather than to say it's for sure right here, it's for sure pre-K, we're wanting to kind of look holistically at where things are landing. And we do anticipate, though, it will be for elementary level. I'm going to skip to the family community specialist, the 1.6. That's actually essentially maintaining what we have right now through the McKinney-Vento grant. So that money, as you might recall, we had this year to help us respond to the significant influx of students arriving. And so these 1.6 has been added to the team for now, but that runs out in September. So this is to continue those folks throughout the school year. And finally, we're putting in a chunk of money for ESOL endorsement coursework. We've attempted to make small moves on this in the past. We've been having a lot of conversations about how we as a district are at a point where we really feel like, if not the whole district, certainly our schools that have high multilingual populations ideally have all of our educators who have some degree of ESOL endorsement, since everybody in our district is an ESOL teacher. And so we're thinking about trying to really move this more significantly in the next year when we have these resources, targeting places like pre-K, where already the work is really focused around language development, in some of our specialized special ed programs where teachers already have such a low ratio and such a deep, intimate knowledge of their students' needs with our instructional coaches, et cetera. So that's reflected here, and the team felt would be a really strategic use of the money, thinking about the cliff, thinking about the long-term needs. And so that's where they came out. And so here, similar to the Portland Promise investments, you can kind of just see the updated synthesis slide. So up on the top, nothing changing in the new local investments, though you do see what I just described reflected on the ESSERF investment side. And then down at the bottom, you see what we pulled from the requested not funded and prior ESSERF not funded. Things that are italicized are there to communicate that some of this kind of strategic thinking of, okay, how do we look at our needs holistically? Those are the pieces that were what I just described are responsive to, but it's not intended to say that it's exactly a one-to-one up above, which is why I italicize the things that are not necessarily a one-to-one correlation with the above investments. And so that's where we then there. And I think you're going to talk operations, Aaron.
Yep. So just a few additional investments on the operations side to address some issues. So adding one FTE of the computer technician to start to work towards the ratios that have been recommended from the kind of outside consulting and analysis that we've done. We have expanded to be fully one-to-one across K to 12, and so and it really expanded to adult ed as well. So adding additional capacity there as well. If you'll recall, our budget also includes some refresh of some student and staff devices. So to be able to help manage the updating of that hardware over the course of the summer and into next year, feel like is a helpful investment for that team. Adding a facilities position, the building and trades worker, to address some of the backlog of facilities needs and repairs, so we can make progress on that as the attention had been turned, to so much pandemic work over the past couple of years, being able to leverage some additional capacity over the coming year to address those needs. And then as well, adding the food service, address the expansion in the number of meals we've been serving for with the adoption of the universal breakfast and lunch food service programs. So just similarly as we did for the other priorities, you can see here, the addition of those in ESSERF and the updated total of the ESSERF investment as it relates to our operations priority, and reflected down below, the things that we had initiated, initially had not funded, but now are able to. And again, I'll flag not able to, fund the full 3.0 in terms of computer technicians at this point. So 2.0 of them remains, unfunded at this point. But in terms of trying to, make progress in our investments and address a range of needs, I feel like this is the appropriate investment for next year. In terms of core services investments, we're recommending the addition of 4 classroom teacher FTEs, and then 1 ed tech FTE at LISETH. So these are really targeted at grade levels at various schools where we see them already in our projected enrollments at the class size maximums. So as we've been discussing over the past couple of weeks since our initial proposed budget, we recognize that some members have interest in reducing class size further. As we've shared, we don't have there are physical and facilities limitations to that, in addition to questions about kind of overall changes in strategy. But we do recognize there are a number of classrooms that are at and are likely to, with increased enrollments, exceed their kind of our class size maximums as they are currently prescribed. And so we anticipate those being moves that we would need to make as kind of post-budget adds regardless in terms of how we manage. So adding those on the front end so that we can ensure that, we're able to hire effectively for those positions. And, from the get-go, we're able to reduce the class size in those targeted areas. So schools that are likely impacted by this as we continue to monitor enrollments would be Reiki, East End, Rowe, potentially Longfellow, and then LISETH, where they don't have additional classroom space to expand into. We would provide the ed tech to be able to provide support in their kindergarten or first grade rooms, depending on enrollment, how enrollment progresses. Additionally, we were adding some additional staff at Portland Adult Ed. It's reflected here as kind of 1.5 teachers. There as with the ongoing enrollments, and as we've talked about previously, there's significant demand for Portland Adult Ed supports and services, both in the English language development side, in the kind of academic coursework, and as well as in their workforce programs. This specifically is really designed to meet some of the backlog on the academic and English language development side, and know that it's resource for them to be able to use, to be able to meet that demand either through expansion in terms of work that they've been doing with their hourly teachers, or converting some of that into additional contract teachers. So we're continuing to work with the PAE leadership to address those needs. And then lastly, reinstating for one final year a position that we've had in ESSERF since the onset of the pandemic, which is releasing the, our nursing coordinator, Tina Vayu, to be able to provide support kind of across the district as, we get our nursing services back up and kind of current, as if you will, from all of the, many years of pandemic focus. So providing supports to nurses in terms of vaccinations and clinics and screenings. Tina is also providing significant support to the Multilingual Center as families are enrolling, because we know many of those students are coming with medical needs and need to get current with our, kind of local immunization requirements. So she provides a significant amount of support there as well. So I feel like this is a worthwhile additional year while we have these resources to be able to get our health and wellness programming back up to speed to prepare for the kind of sunset of the ESSERF services supports. So here you see again just the same summary that we've shown for the others, so you can see holistically what's in our kind of revised proposed budget in terms of programmatic investments. The only one place that it's different here, we had proposed the reduction of the community coordinators, so you see that on the local investment side, but all of the other additional investments that we're naming here today have fallen on the SRF side. So we have a few here, and as you've seen them in the other slides. So in summary, just as it relates to SRF, just to kind of track the changes and impact, our original proposed budget, had that 2.5 million of staff positions that we were pulling out of the local budget onto SRF. So the math coaches, the teaching positions, and the high school youth development, in addition to those initial investments by priority area. So this revised budget now reflects moving those staff positions back to local, and the additional investments that Malia and I have just kind of stepped through in terms of related to the priority areas. So you'll see we have not yet at this point added those additional expended all of the available, what we anticipate being available SRF dollars at this juncture, but felt like these were the right proposed investments at this time. And there will be, if we remain on track with kind of our expenditures as anticipated, still a little bit of flexibility as we move into FY24 for some remaining, appropriations as it relates to SRF. So just super briefly for the public and everybody, this is the additional finance committee meeting that we scheduled last week based on the shifts to the state subsidy following last Tuesdays. So we look forward to tomorrow evening, hopefully having our first read of the budget. It comes out of committee tonight as anticipated. We'll as well, have a public hearing on the budget. So focusing on that for tomorrow evening. We have our second joint city and school finance committee meeting this Thursday evening in anticipation of hopefully a second reading and formal vote to approve the budget on April 11th. Which would then carry us forward to the city council with an anticipated vote date of May 15th for the city council, and then the public referendum date on June 13th. So those are the updates as it relates to our proposed budget, and we'll pause here to take any questions before we move to public comment and further discussion.
Thank you so much. I'm going to open it up for questions for members of the committee or members of the board that are not on the committee, recognizing that members of the board who are not on the committee, hello, Member Russell Better, for example, are not going to be able to vote or move forward amendments, but wanted to open it up for questions before we make the public comment portion of the meeting available. Member Figdor, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks so much to our co-interim superintendents for all of this work after getting the wonderful but completely unexpected news of getting an additional $3.6 million. So thank you so much. I know that this was not what you expected in a year of things that are unexpected. So I have three questions. One is, given that we'll have some remaining unallocated ESSER funds, are we thinking, my understanding or what I remember is that the last date that we can spend those funds is September 30th of 2024. Is that correct? And so would we be aiming just to reserve some of those funds for next summer, for the summer of 2024? Or we're just thinking more generally that we know we're going to have needs and we'll figure out what the most urgent needs are as we get closer.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to jump in, Aaron?
I was going to say, certainly summer 2024 would be, a priority to be able to supplement. Our initial budget had allocated 1.6 million, for summer 2023 and summer 2024. So to the degree we're able to, reserve or preserve any funds for, summer programming next year, that would be great. And there may be positions that we do want to continue beyond the end of, all of these costs are projected as kind of the end of the fiscal year. year, June 30th. So it just allows us some flexibility, I think, programmatically. I would say, and Malia, amend this as appropriate, but certainly we're would like to be able to extend some of our summer programming next year, but that's a decision we feel like we can come to given the amount of dollars at a subsequent moment.
Okay, great. My second question was in the initial budget, and I just never asked the question, but realizing it's still a question for me. I know that we are not continuing an HR benefits assistant position, and I am sorry if we talked about this, but I can't remember the reasoning, and I guess just knowing how we need to staff up our operations staff, I'm wondering why we're doing this, and do we need, how are we compensating for the loss of this position?
Yeah, no, thank you. And we haven't spoken about it, so I appreciate you flagging that. It relates to the discussion we had during the workshop last week and kind of overall plan for the segregation of duties. So that had been kind of narrowly, supporting Dee Dudley, who's our benefits coordinator, who does an amazing job. And so with the addition of the 3 generalists, those responsibilities, in addition to some of the other segregation of duties, will be distributed amongst the 3 new generalists. So we had debated for a period about adding 2 generalists and maintaining the HR benefits assistant, but we felt like with the employee facing and the responsibilities we wanted those generalist positions to have. So now again, that'll put us at 5 generalists total. So we have 2 existing that we maintain, and adding these 3, in addition to some of the other responsibilities that we'll bring back from payroll. That our most strategic investment was adding that capacity in terms of those 3 HR generalists.
Okay, thank you so much. And my final question is with respect to the pre-K DLL position that was cut, and I understand the stepping back and thinking holistically about needs for our multilingual students. I do remain concerned just based on understanding how our population is increasing right now, and that we're seeing increases in our multilingual students, and we already are over the ratio that we committed to in the LAU plan. So the LAU plan says that pre-K DLL teachers will serve 18 students. And right now we have 94 students served by 5 pre-K DLL teachers. So that's a ratio of 18.8. So I'm concerned about this because I want us to stick to our ratios and certainly our commitments that we make in the LAU plan. But then just knowing that there are very few silver bullets in public policy, but pre-K is one. It just makes the benefits of pre-K are pretty awesome, impacting kids throughout their lives in a multitude of ways, both academically and socially and in their careers. And so I want to make sure we're meeting the basic needs of our DLL students. So I get that there's one more teacher put in, but that it's likely elementary. And just again, looking at the recent increase in multilingual students, I'm betting that we need that teacher at the elementary school level as well. So I guess I would like, my question is, given that we're above the ratio that we committed to in our LAU plan, why are we not specifically adding the pre-K DLL teacher back? And one last thing I'll say is these teachers have like a really challenging job because they're serving kids in so many different sites. So they're serving kids, I believe, this year in 11 locations and next year in 12 locations. So these 4, or if we add that position back, 5 teachers are running around the district to serve these students. It's not, it's a having fewer of them to serve the same number of students is I think is a big barrier towards meeting the needs of these students.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ESOL teacher that we have in the budget, like pre-K was certainly a lot of what we talked about along with Reiki. Also, I think the hope is that, so at the pre-K level, a lot of their work is language development. So there's a lot of kind of ideas pertaining to how we can really think potentially more creatively about how all pre-K teachers are ESOL teachers, and sort of really trying to work collaboratively with that team of ESOL teachers in pre-K, as well as the classroom teachers, to start to think about what that could look like. But we could use the ESOL teacher for pre-K. I mean, pre-K and Reiki are the two that we've been looking at. So our instinct was we definitely want to add more ESOL teachers. When we asked the team, that I mentioned what they'd recommend, we were trying to look holistically and strategically about what we have for a year and how do we build toward the cliff. And this is what they recommended. Now, if we could sort of add more ESOL teachers to the local budget and whatnot, I think that would be awesome. But this is kind of where they came out as a balanced recommendation. But I do want to be clear that it's not that we're not using it for pre-K. I think it's looking at potentially the kind of portfolios people have in the different placements. The other big thing is for the pre-K teachers, finding somebody that has both the pre-K qualifications and the ELL qualifications has proven extremely challenging, which is another reason why we want to work collaboratively with the ESOL pre-K team to think about what might be possible if we were thinking kind of outside the box around how we really make sure that we're differentiating to meet the needs of our young multilingual learners. But Erin, it looks like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just briefly to clarify again, that position had been, there last year, but had gone unfilled because of the challenges Malia is naming. So that position was resourced over the past year, but we hadn't been able to fill it because of the challenges of finding a candidate to meet, that has those two specific backgrounds. And it has been all along as we've tried to build that model. So thus leading to some of the kind of thinking about how we can, what are some more creative ways, particularly as our numbers grow, both, across the board in terms of multilingual learners. We know that states and communities, Massachusetts, California, it becomes a basic expectation to have, the endorsements around ESOL, because so many students in people's classrooms are English language learners, and we can't ESOL teacher our way out of the issue, right? We just won't have resources to do that. We need to develop the competency, because what's good for English language learners is generally good for all learners as well. So adding that capacity.
I certainly support that and think that that's powerful. I just wonder, in the transition to having those teachers be in a place where they have that endorsement, we need to serve those pre-K students. And I guess my last question, and I'm sorry to take up the time, but my last question is, do we know if we're over our ratio at Reiki? So are our ratios suggesting that we actually need two teachers here, one for pre-K and one at Reiki?
I think we're on the edge, Emily. So I think, those are the places where we're most on the edge. Yeah.
And we're on the edge with current enrollment, or with the projections, incling looking
with current. I'll text Carlos if he has what his latest point in time was. But it was pretty current when we looked at it, but I can get back to you probably within this meeting.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Board Member Youssef, go ahead.
I think Board Member Lentis and Oberman was before me.
Oh, you're on my screen. You're at the top left, so go for it.
Oh, thank you. I leave the video off because my internet's not good. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for the explanation, though.
Oh, thanks. So, do we know how much the SRS that will be the remaining approximate.
I didn't understand that. Sorry, can you say that again, Yusuf?
Oh, the remaining SRF amount that we will not be using this time.
Miranda,
Yeah.
the remaining SRF dollars that, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the amount that we haven't actually allocated yet, it's only
Yes.
about it's only about $150,000 because we had originally said about 7.8, and so we've allocated about 150,000 less than that.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So I think and I don't want to interfere the incredible work that the central team provides, but I'm thinking is it possible if we go to 5.5 in the tax?
You're cutting out there, Yusuf. Did anyone catch the full thing? Something about going to 5.5?
Yes. Yeah, I was talking about recognizing all the prioritize and the credible work that you and the team did. Are we able to go a little bit down to 5.5?
Oh, on the tax. Is that what you were saying?
On the tax, yeah.
Got you. I mean, yeah, if we were to reduce the tax rate further, what is that, about $500,000 of cuts, Miranda? So we would just have to go back and remove $500,000 from what we have. When we were in the last finance committee meeting with you all, we asked you for your guidance on the tax rate increase, and we heard from the committee 6.5. And so we actually contemplated 6.5, and after further reflection, just didn't think that that was a significant enough drop for the taxpayers. And so Aaron and I recommended the 6%, and we vetted that with the finance committee chair on Friday, probably, because we're doing this week late in the week. And, you know, I think, Sarah, you said that was fine. So we were working with 6.5 as our kind of takeaway from you all, but then brought it down to 6 based on our own kind of judgment of what we thought was appropriate. But yes, I mean, if you guys want to now bring it down even further, that's possible. It'll just be about another $500,000 we have to go back and cut back out of our local budget. And if we do that, member Yusuf, that $5 million we cut out of the local, it'll probably just sort of, the whole trickle will happen, right? In terms of then what has to maybe move over into ESSERF and what gets cut out of ESSERF. So we'd have to, you know, retrace our steps and figure out what ultimately falls off, if you will.
Thank you for explaining. Appreciate it.
Did you have other questions, board member Yusuf? Oh, he's frozen. I think that.
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, super. All right. Thank you. Super. Okay. Go into our last committee member, board member Opperman. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Malia and Aaron and Miranda, for working it all through again. It's maybe again, I guess. I have 3, maybe 4 questions, and there are things that have come to my attention from individuals in the community, so I just wanted to bring them forward. And for some, maybe not so much a change in the budget immediately, but as again, a thought process. Peakswood Island schools were requesting a social worker, which is a very reasonable request, except that it's a lot of money in addition. And I was wondering if it's possible for the island communities to work to consolidate their Cliff and Peaks and Diamond Island students so that they are together. And again, it's something to keep in the back of the mind because I think would be I would, if that happened, I would push for a social worker at the school because it's getting to the island. So that's not so much a question. I guess the one question is for students that are enrolled at Portland from other SAUs. I don't know how many we have of those, but they are. I want to make sure in the superintendent's agreements, are we getting funded for each and every one of those? That would be my question to find out. I don't know that you know the answer right now, but that would be a question. So, students coming from other districts here as a regular student. So that would be one of my questions. And another one, and you did mention doing some working with PAE, Portland Adult Ed, and increasing the number of contracted teachers there. I wondered how many do not have a contract as part of the Portland Education Association, and how are the non-contractual salaries differ from the ones within the union? And that would be another question I have. I don't know. Again, I don't know if you want to answer that right now or answer it at another time. And last one is on when looking at the budget and looking at student counts and all, and those, there is when we went from FY 23 to FY 24 columns, were the FY 23 column of teachers and other staff actual numbers, or were they from the previous budget just carried over, which is the easiest logical thing to do. But I just didn't know how many positions we didn't fill this year. I mean, you mentioned one with the DULL teacher. I just wondered how many of those FY 23 that are listed as last year FY 23 expenditures, how many of those really weren't expended? That's it. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Opperman. Just briefly, I think some of the tuition one, we can get, a little bit more background in terms of numbers and costs. I would also include, we have a handful of students through our relationship with Governor Baxter that are out of district that we serve here in our Portland schools, either in our program at East End or Portland High. So that's another group of students coming from out of the district that we serve here locally, but we can update all the tuition expectations around that. In terms of, the other group, and I'll get, the numbers, I don't have it off the top of my head, the number of hourly teachers. So certainly Portland Adult Ed relies on an amazing crew of hourly teachers to kind of complement the number of contracted teachers. I mean, the Portland Adult Ed budgeting situation is a tricky one because their budget is, even compared to the rest of our schools, is much more minimally, it's significantly grant funded. So that's for a long time has posed a challenge in terms of establishing numerous ongoing contracted teacher positions. And so know that they're doing some work to try and figure out what's the best kind of allocation of some additional resource to support, both their hourly teachers as well as whether they can continue to make progress in growing the number of contracted teachers on staff. And then I think the last question was there. I think I don't know of any that comes off the top of my head, Malia. Of positions, FY 23 budgeted positions that haven't been filled at some point in the year. Certainly there were late hires into a number of positions. We've had people transition out and have had some long-term subs, but I'm not aware of any other positions that have gone all year, specifically teaching positions that have gone all year unfilled. But we can confirm that, but just as an initial reaction to that point.
I think there was a couple positions in ESSERF that like the 2.0 BCBA, there was an Ed Tech and Breathe. So there's a handful of things there that I think we tried to highlight, but those are from ESSERF.
And the pre-K DLL teacher, Julie was, there was someone in that position, and then they moved to third or fourth grade. I think at some point in the fall.
Okay. Before we move to public comment, Board Chair Lentz, go ahead.
Sorry, I had to jump to just take an urgent call. So I missed the last couple of minutes, but I just really wanted to commend everybody that turned this budget around so quickly, but also in such a responsive way. I feel like every board member's kind of like thoughts and concerns were addressed in addition to all of the community emails that we've been getting. So I just really want to recognize the intentionality in this budget and really centering our students and their needs. So thank you to everybody that's done that. And then I just wanted to, and I don't know if we have the information on this now, but if we could have it for tomorrow night, I think it would be helpful, just looking at what the cliff looks like next year. And I don't know, kind of like with, Miranda, you did all of that really great prediction for next year. Does all of that stay the same, or does it change? So I'm just like curious about next year. I just want to make sure we have a really clear picture about what next year looks like in terms of these investments.
Yeah, we can kind of go back and talk about that before we put together the materials for tomorrow. But one thing I do want to mention, just right off the bat, is that one thing that does change is that the floor I talked about is now $3.6 million further away. So in theory, I think it's much less likely we'll become a minimum receiver next year, right? But that floor is now further away. It's a good thing. We have more money. We're starting at a higher funding level, but it becomes more unpredictable, actually, in some ways, because we're further from that floor. So certainly we can have a discussion on that. But, we also have now fewer core services under this revised proposal that are sitting in ESSERF, right? So the city council did ask as well for some information about, what that looks like in terms of, what's going to continue, what's not going to continue. We haven't fully, gone through had those discussions or been able to identify exactly, how that would look next year in terms of ESSERF and what is slated to continue or not. But they did ask for that information as well. So that could be part of that conversation.
Board Member Russell Better, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to echo some of what Chair Lentz shared. I just really want to thank the co-superintendents and Miranda, and just incredible work you've done in a short amount of days, and just the responsiveness to the board, and also the staff that you've consulted with. I just feel like just your thoughtfulness about these positions is incredible, and what you've been able to return to the budget. I'm just really pleased, especially some of the social emotional, the BCBA position, and the PAE staff. We got such feedback about them needing those FTEs. So I'm so appreciative of that. And the community coordinator positions being reinstated. So thank you for all that. And my just brief question, and I'm sorry I didn't think to email this earlier, but I just, Dr. Opperman's question about Peaks Island. Can you just clarify what Peaks Island does currently have for social work? Do they have a halftime, or can you just clarify what that?
Erin, do you know if I have to go back to our ratio.
They have a half-time social worker.
And is it filled right now, or was it?
I met the gentleman who was onboarding on Thursday or Friday last week. So there was another half-time pre-K social work position. So somebody is now that had also been vacant, had been hard to staff. So now, yes.
I see. They're doing both.
Right. Yep. Okay. So he's now hired as a 1.0, half of his time dedicated to Peaks Island, half of his time dedicated to pre-K support.
Okay. Thank you. Because I think what I was unclear was I understand the request for more, but also I think that there wasn't a filled position. So I was unclear so has that been this school year that's been difficult to?
I forget one point. Yeah. Do you remember?
I don't remember.
That's
when,
okay.
Somebody was in the position before, and then,
I think I recall that. Thank you. I just wanted to be clear, like what it was now. So it sounds like halftime. Thank you so much.
Great. Okay. So before I move to public comment, I also just want to echo what a few of us have already said in terms of expressing gratitude for all the really hard work and really excellent collaborative work that has been done very quickly to get us to this point in the conversation. I also just wanted to add my appreciation for you folks on the staff who have not only taken sort of the spirit of what we as board members said was important to us, but turned that into creative problem solving. So with the, the Living Schoolyard program and sort of tweaking the approach to that, and the school-based language access work that you put together with recommendations from your teams, I just really appreciate that. So thank you. We are now going to move to public comment, and some reminders about public comment, or just true statements for folks who might be new. For public comment, it's an opportunity for members of the public to speak for 3 minutes. Board members do not respond to questions, or it's really it's an opportunity to say something and not necessarily get a response within this arena. We don't allow complaints or allegations about staff members or any other people that are associated with the district. If you want to give public comment, you can use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. I'll keep the time at about 2.5 minutes. I'll let you know you're almost done. And then at the end of 3 minutes, I will ask to see if you would like a little bit of additional time. So I'm going to get my stopwatch ready to go, because I do see one person has their hand up. Let me see. Okay. And now okay. All right. Let's bring Stephen Scharf over.
Sarah, I don't mind managing that if that's helpful.
I did just try to do it. If it didn't work, then could you please? Thank you. Stephen Scharf, go ahead. I also did forget, as you may be aware, we would ask that you start by introducing yourself with your name, where you live, and then 3 minutes. So Stephen, go ahead. Stephen, go ahead. Stephen Scharf, are you there? Go ahead.
He may be muted.
I don't see him there anymore.
Stephen, I still see you on my screen, but your hand is not up anymore. If you'd like to give public comment, you're welcome to do so. Okay, well, while we wait and see if that can get sorted out, I also see Shoshana Hoos has a hand raised. Shoshana. Yes, go ahead, Shoshana. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Shoshana Hose. I live at 29 Alden Circle. I teach at ESL at Portland Adult Education. I'm going to be at the hearing tomorrow night with some of my colleagues to talk about a specific issue that has arisen regarding the budget at adult ed for hourly teachers. But I did want to respond to the comments tonight about the hourly teaching staff at adult ed. There are, I believe, about 50 hourly teachers at adult ed, and I'm not exactly sure how many contracted teachers, but it's definitely a lot smaller. Most of the work at adult ed in teaching ESL and workplace topics is done by the hourly staff. We're not covered in any way by the PEA contract. We only get the minimal benefits that are provided under state and federal law. And our compensation in total is approximately 2.5 times less than the contracted teachers who we work side by side. And some of us have equal or greater experience and qualifications. So it's a profoundly unfair situation in general, but there is a specific urgent need that I'll talk about with my colleagues tomorrow night. But anyway, I just want you to understand most of the work at adult ed is done by hourly teachers, and we are in a completely different situation than any other teacher in the Portland school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoshana. Okay. I am not seeing other. Oh, Kelly has a hand raised as well. Hi, Kelly. The floor is yours. Go ahead. Yes,
Hi,
go ahead.
thanks. First of all, thanks everybody for this Herculean effort of re-examining the budget with the good news from the state. I just want to thank Board Member Opperman for raising the concerns that we have about the request for a full-time social worker for the coming school year. And I just want to give a couple of clarifications. We haven't had social workers since December 2nd, and our new one is going to begin on April 10th. So we've been 4 months without one. So we do have compensatory services that will need to be given to students who have social work on their IEPs. And the request for the full-time isn't just for Peaks. It is, you mentioned consolidation. It is for Peaks and Cliff Island School. The bulk of the time is more spent on Peaks of the 0.5 position currently, when we had somebody. And then there are a couple hours a week spent at Cliff Island. Great Diamond Island students currently attend Long Island. Portland Public Schools pays their tuition to attend there, and I'm not sure how many there are. I think it's 4 or 5. But our concern, we are grateful that we have somebody now coming. It is still half-time, and Alyssa Bork, the pre-K director, and I have been working together on trying to flesh out a schedule. We are a little concerned of how that's going to work because over the multiple pre-K sites that person will be, but that's for this year, and we'll figure it out and we'll make it work. But I really do want to say that our mental health needs and our social emotional needs on the island, I know ratios are very differently reflected on mainland schools, but we're an island, 2 islands that when there are crises, it's not a matter of just going across town or getting someone that quick. So we really, this is my 5th year there now, back there. And I just can't say enough about the need for a full-time person to be there. It's with the crises we've had this year. Each time there hasn't been somebody on staff. Even when we had a social worker, the person was, it was not part of their day. So I just want to say that. And again, thank you for your time and for your
perfect timing, Kelly. You did a really good job of speaking for almost exactly 3 minutes. Thank you.
I do my best. No,
good job. And I see Stephen has a hand up again. Let's try again. Go ahead, Stephen.
You crashed my computer.
Oh.
I don't know what you did, but it did all sorts of crazy things with Zoom, and finally the thing went off. I'm on my tablet at the moment, and I need to get back to my notes so I can. First question is, how many people are actually on the call from the public?
Oh, so one of the public comment reminders was that we don't respond to.
I just want to know how many people are on the call. It's just a simple question. Okay. Want to be non-responsive to the public? You can be. I just want to say that $1 million is good. $3 million would be better. I want you to understand that everything you add back to ESSERF, you need to understand that is a one-time investment because you are not going to have money next year to fund any of that. And so you're looking at a $20 million cliff in 2025, and there will be no money for any of that stuff that you move back to ESSERF. So or that you put into ESSER and are spending this year. I'm trying to read my notes as there are three sets of positions that I feel are not necessary in the school budget and would request that you remove them. They are the living schoolyard teachers, the mobile maker space teacher, and the 3.38 community coordinator positions. And I have two other last questions. Can you please, or the superintendents had gotten back into the bad habit of using abbreviations. BCBA and SEL make no sense to the general public. So can you please identify what those are? But those are my comments at this time. And I would like to know how many people are on the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. Let's see. So I think, and I suspect folks who are in Zoom can probably click on, as an attendee, I'm not sure if you can go into the attendee list and take a look at that. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other folks with hands up. So I'm going to close public comment. And I will be now looking for a motion to amend the budget that we had previous in alignment with the recommendations and revisions that we have just been presented with. Board Member Figdor, thank you. Do I have a second? Board Member Youssef, thank you so much. So let's see. So now we're going, is there any board discussion about that? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. Member Opperman.
Yes.
Member Youssef.
Yes.
Member Figdor.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes, so that is unanimous. And now we are discussing today, the presentation today, the revised co-interim superintendent's recommended budget is now currently the budget that is on the table for discussion. And I am going to be looking to see if any of the committee members have other amendments that they would like to make.
No.
Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to propose an amendment to add back the pre-K DLL teacher, dual language learners teacher, that was cut from the budget. Our ratios, our Lao plan ratios require that we add that position back just to meet our current student needs. And we know we have just many multilingual students joining our district. So anticipate only more need. And I appreciate the step back and bigger picture thinking. But it sounds like we might also need a position at Reiki, and pre-K is just such an essential time to start kids' education. And again, just going back to like very few silver bullets, pre-K is one. So let's ensure that we're meeting our multilingual students' needs. And my proposal is to add the position to the local budget. And I don't know, Miranda, if you can tell me what the dollar figure for that would be.
Yeah, let's call it 70,000 just to have a round number. That would be the general teacher vacancy rate, which the position's vacant now. So that's what we would use.
Thank you. So again, just to summarize, I'm adding a pre-K DLL teacher to the local budget at a cost of an additional $70,000, approximately $70,000. So I'm not proposing an offset or to add it or to pay it with ESSER funds, but specifically through the local budget.
Do we have a second for that? Member Youssef, thank you so much. Okay, board discussion. Board Member Opperman, go ahead.
I agree that that position is needed, but I do like the fact that there is a holistic way of looking at it, because even between now and September, the numbers of and location of individuals who might use benefit from a DLL teacher may change. So I thought that the co-interim superintendents handled that piece pretty well. That's my opinion.
Discussion about this. And I will also say, I really appreciate the staff's approach to, again, taking in sort of the spirit of what we voiced as our priorities, and taking the approach of sort of leaving open the flexibility to sort of move a little bit, move some things around when we have more information about specific needs. So I really appreciate that. Seeing no more board discussion, let's take a vote on this motion to add the pre-K DLL teacher at $70,000 back to the local budget.
Chair?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Could I just see if Superintendent Nally received the information about the ratios at Reiki?
Oh, sure. Yep.
To see if, so the question is, are our current ratios demanding that, in fact, we have both an additional pre-K DLL teacher and another ESL teacher, ESOL teacher at Reiki?
Yeah, hold on. Sorry, guys, just give me 3 seconds. I'm pulling up one thing. I have half your answer. Okay. So Reiki, so we have 207 multilingual students, K-5 at Reiki. And that is right now, I think, a 31 ratio, 31-1. And when I'm looking at the average, it's 28-1 across elementary schools. I'm looking in our tool right now. So with the East End having 32.5-1 in the latest. Sorry, no, I'm looking at the data as we speak. So I think that we would, so there's that other teacher that's why we didn't want to name it immediately, because we wanted to have the flexibility to really think strategically based on how things are coming in. But that's the data I see right now in terms of Reiki, Emily.
So thank you. So just to reiterate or to summarize, the based on our current enrollment, these two positions are the current enrollment kind of necessitates actually funding both positions if we're following through on the commitments we made in terms of the ratios.
And actually I'm looking at, Aaron, I see you're in the tool here too. 28-1. And they're right. East End actually was at 28 in the last time I saw in this thing. So that would put Reiki at the highest. That puts Reiki at the highest, yes. And above the average. And they are still, I think, Aaron, do they still have space to continue receiving?
We have, they have ongoing, and Grace can speak to this as well, ongoing neighborhood enrollments, from families that are doubled up, but, so that has been a historic challenge in the neighborhood. So there are a few, but really there's very few space. We've diverted as many new enrollments as we can to other school sites, which is posing other challenges down the line too. But given the numbers that we have, but there have been a handful of additional new enrollments, but not at the same volume as there was previously in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just as a follow-up question, do we expect additional multilingual students to enroll prior to the start of next year?
Yeah, Grace, I don't know what you'd offer. I mean, I think the answer is yes. Again, the dynamic there is mostly families that are not coming through the family shelter, but many of the families that we're enrolling, multilingual families, are, kind of quote unquote doubling up with additional families in the neighborhood. Is one of the challenges in terms of enrollment. So thus they're there in the neighborhood, and not easily feasible to transfer them out. So we are for the remainder of this year, they're staffing up with adding a 1 to 2 ed techs to be able to support some of the overages at some of the grade levels.
And I would just chime in again and just say, so if I think we go for a 28-1. So they're at 31-1, but then we have multiple schools at around 29. So just again, why we were like, let's figure things out. But they're all kind of maxed. Most of them are at the top of the threshold, if you will.
And we wouldn't actually be committing the elementary ESOL teacher to Reiki. It's based on where the need would be in the next school year in the fall. Okay, so just to summarize again, we have the students that in terms of the ratios, to meet the ratios that we've committed to, we need actually 2 positions. So I'm just reiterating the need for or my amendment to add back the pre-K DLL teacher.
Board Member Opperman, did you have an addition?
I did. I had a question because Board Member Figdor mentioned we're not meeting our LAO ratios. And what is, bring back to my memory, what is the LAO ratio that we're supposed to be using for these individuals?
The pre-K we have set at 18-1. And then I think we're 28-1 at elementary.
Okay.
And we have 94, my understanding is we have 94 DLL students in pre-K now. So that would be a 18.8-1 ratio with 5, not with, the budget for next year right now just has 4. So someone can do that math for me, but it's definitely above the ratio.
Well, the pre-K estimate for next year is 105 multilingual learners. That's still moving a little bit. But that's what the director just told me.
So that would be a ratio of 26-1.
Pre-K.
Yeah, at the pre-K level.
The need is definitely there.
Other questions, comments, discussion points before we vote? Okay, seeing none. Board Member Opperman.
No.
Board Member Youssef.
Yes.
Board Member Figdor.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. So the motion passes. Are there other amendments from other members of the committee to be considered? Okay. So now the final agenda item that we have this evening is consideration and action to move the budget to the full board. Do I have a motion for that? Member Figdor, seconded by Board Member Opperman. Thank you. Okay. Board discussion on this.
Just
Board Member Opperman.
Just to clarify, tomorrow when it goes to the general board, they can make an additional amendments, et cetera. So just for people to know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And we will come with the updated numbers in terms of the ad that was made, if you guys pass that one forward.
And just to be a little bit more specific, tomorrow's first read, so there aren't amendments considered on the budget tomorrow, but when we consider the budget on final passage a week from tomorrow, that's when we would consider further amendments. But it's great for board members to talk about any amendments that they anticipate, so we all can be as prepared as possible to consider them and be as thoughtful as possible about it.
Yeah, tomorrow, the first read, we'll have public hearing. So again, a reminder, we'll have public hearing, and then we'll have a workshop for discussion around the budget where we can update on some of our pieces, but that can also be a venue to potentially preview if members are thinking about considering any amendments for the 11th to take action on the 11th.
Thank you very much. Okay. Other questions, other comments? Board Member Figdor, go ahead.
Just one last thing, and I think this Chair Lentz made this request, and I don't know, Miranda, if it's feasible given all that you've been doing, but if we can have an updated look at the FY25 forecast, given the new information from the state and our updated budget, that would be very helpful to me. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else before we vote on the motion to move the budget in its current state to the full board? Any more discussion? Okay, so now we're going to vote. Board Member Opperman.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Youssef.
Yes.
Board Member Figdor.
Yes.
And I also will vote yes. It is unanimous. Before I look for a motion to adjourn, I do just want to I want to say that I was made aware that attendees who are not panelists or hosts of the meeting cannot see the attendee list. So we are currently at 9 attendees. So 12 panelists, 9 attendees. I think during public comment, we are up to around 10 or 11 attendees. So I apologize for not realizing what the user experience was on the other side of the coin. So now I will be looking for a motion to adjourn. Board Member Opperman, second. Board Member Youssef, thank you. Okay, and of the committee members, show of hands, vote to adjourn. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good evening.